It is February 10th, 1997, and we're here at Alfred Eaton's home, and we're going to be interviewing him, and we're going to be asking him some questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with number one. What was your name at birth?
Alfred Eaton.
Where and in what year were you born?
I was born right here in Metlakatla in the year 1910, April 30th, 1910.
Okay. What was your mother and your father's names?
My mother's name was Isabel. Her maiden name was Hall, Isabel Hall. And my father's name was Matthew Eaton.
Okay. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had three brothers and 8 sisters.
Oh.
And I was number 12. But I only saw, let's see, Louise, Mary, 4 of my sisters.
Okay.
And I only saw one of my brothers. The rest of them had sense enough to die before I came.
Okay. Could you give me their names, all of them?
I don't really remember the names of the ones that were dead before I came, but the ones that were around when I came, my oldest sister was Louise. Louise Eaton. She was married to Simon Dalton, that old blind man that used to live in Ketchikan.
Okay.
And my other sister was Mary, and she was married to Robert Dundas, Ethel McGilton's uncle. And she was Mary Dundas. And the other sister I have was Adeline, and she died as a young girl. She was about the same age as William Buchanan. And the other one was Clara. And the only brother that I saw was Fred Eaton. He died in 1930, I think.
Okay, who did you marry?
Martha Cecil was her maiden name. She's from BC. But she was married to George Fawcett first. That her first husband was George Fawcett.
Okay, what were your children's names?
My oldest son that passed away was Henry. And the next one is my daughter Mary. And the third one was Benny. And the fourth one was Sarah. And my baby was Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
She's the youngest one.
Okay. What crest do you belong to?
Eagle. I'm an eagle.
Okay. Is that the only crest you could use?
Yes, that's all.
Okay. Did you have any Indian name, Blit?
Oh yes, all of us have. No, Tsimshians, they have different names while they're growing up. They have what they call your childhood name, and then your adult name. And if you're a member of a royal family like the chief's family, then you have a chief's name. So I have a childhood name, and I have an adult name, and I was supposed to be a chief of one of the tribes in BC known as Ketchikan tribe, way up above the Skeena River.
Could you tell me your Indian names?
My childhood name was Nukuts Lakashan.
Could you interpret it for me?
Huh?
Could you tell me what it meant?
There was like a son. I don't know why they do that in the old days. You know, they name you after your pet.
Oh.
It was Larachan.
Uh-huh.
Larachan means, it doesn't sound so good, gambler on both sides.
Okay.
But I'm not a gambler.
Uh-huh.
And my adult name is a hider name. But that's a long story. I don't know whether you want to hear it or not.
Oh, go ahead. We have time.
My adult name was, it's a hider name. No, I forgot.
Okay. What was the name of the elementary school you attended? Was it public or residential?
It's a public school. A government school. It used to be known to us as a government school. It was when Alaska was a territory, you see, and the school is operated by BIE. That's the only place where I went to school. You remember that's where it used to be up here. That's a public school.
Okay. Who were your chiefs and other significant people in your childhood?
What?
Who were your chiefs, if there was any, and who were the important people in your childhood?
The important people?
In your childhood, do you remember anybody being important to you?
Oh, I don't know what that really means.
Okay, who do you remember in your life, when you were small, that did something that left an impression on you, that you really had high respect for, or you had high...
Oh, yeah.
And something that they did that helped you in your life now,
Yeah.
or while you were growing up?
Oh, there's too many to mention. There were a lot of good people. You know, my father died when I was 9 years old, and I missed the tutelage of a father. And just everywhere I go in this community, there will be some older men, when they see me do something wrong, they'll come to me like they were my fathers. I remember John Hudson, Lillian Buchert's father, and I remember your grandfather, Andrew Usher. He gave me a lot of good advice. I got a lot of good advice from that man. And I remember, there are several others that I remember. It's just lots of, and these men were real outstanding to me. Andrew Usher and old man Dan Rees here. All those men, Harry Lang, I remember them. And I remember old Joseph Hayward. He used to preach to me when I was a little boy, you know. He used to tell me what to do and what not to do. And there was a lot of them, there are too many to mention. But this town was full of that. We don't see that very much now. We just, sometimes we look at some young person doing wrong, and we just say, well, I have nothing to do with that. That's not my brother, or something like that. You know? But that attitude wasn't when I was growing up. All the people here were united. See, they worked together, they helped each other, and so on. So those great men that I've mentioned are really, and I just couldn't remember right off the bat who the rest were.
Okay, from the men you mentioned, is there any kind of stories you could tell us about one or two of the men that you were talking about? Do you remember anything about them, and tell us a little story about them?
Oh, let's see. There were those two men that I've mentioned, John Hudson and Rush, were the mayors of this community. And this community was just like one big family in those days when these two men were. And these, there are others like Andrew and John Hudson. Joseph Hayward, he was an outstanding member of elder in the church. That's what I remember about him. And Oma Dan Rees. I remember Reverend Schmidt told me about Dan Rees. Dan Rees, if you do anything to him, say anything bad about him, he won't fight back. He'll just still be your friend. That's something I learned from him. See. He was a real humble Christian, a good humble Christian man. That's what I remember about Dan Rees. And there's a lot of others that I don't forget real easy. You know. I remember one thing that I remember about Andrew Usher. He told me once, I forgot what brought that up, about admitting your mistakes, you know. You don't see that very much of that around now, you know. And this is what he told me. Somebody that admits their mistakes, it takes a real man or a real woman to be able to do that, see, to admit your mistakes, if you make a mistake. But if you know you're right, then you have to stand by it. Now you don't see it very much now in our generation. You know. Even when you know you're wrong, you still push yourself up and say, I'm right and you're wrong. And that's what Andrew Usher taught. See. It takes a real man or a real woman to admit they're wrong when they're wrong. And that's what we need now.
Okay, what are your feelings or your beliefs about the importance of passing along your language to your children and your grandchildren?
I think that's really important. I wish I was still in better health. I'd have done all I can to try to teach it. I even invite some young people now when I don't want to go out very much, you know. If you want to know some words in Tsimshian, don't be afraid to ask. I'm just perfectly. I think we should do everything because our language is dying out real fast. And way back, there were some people that blamed this old government school that you used to have, you know, but it wasn't. I disagree with it. It wasn't the school's fault that we're losing our language. It's the mixture of people. You know what I mean? Before we had a high school here, our young people, you know that, went out to get their high school education somewhere else. And they got mixed with the Highlanders, Clinkets, Whites, and so forth. And some of them come home with husbands or wives. So there's mixture in the homes here, you know, and you can very well use your language. And say the Highlanders the same way. So that's the reason we're losing our language. But we can do something about it if people like you that will just keep on trying and save just as much as you can. I've been wanting to encourage people like you on this deal, you know, about saving our language. We can still save what we can now, if you only try. So I think it's really important. And I really thank and appreciate when I hear people trying to, like you and the rest are trying to do.
Okay, did anything happen in school, in your adult life? Did anything happen that affect your speaking of your language?
In school?
Did anything, did anything happen that that affected you with your language in school?
Oh no, that's what I was telling you. It isn't school fault that we're losing our language. They taught us. We used to talk in our language, in my generation, I mean, you know. And the school had a hard time trying to teach us English because we like to use our own language, you know. So they made a ruling one time when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. I think I was halfway through grade school then. When they made a ruling that we should talk English on the school ground, just on the school ground. Talk English, and if you talk in your own language on the school ground, then you're punished. Not a severe punishment, you know, just cleaning erasers or doing something like that, staying after school, or and they used to burn wood in that old furnace, old boiler they used to have up there. And I bet you I carried more wood than anybody else. That's why I lived like that after I got out of school. Yeah, so it is not the school's fault that we're losing our language. When you get off the school ground, then you're free to use your own language again. But it's a mixture of people now that we're into the intermarriage with different. That's what does the damage. See?
Okay. What effect did school have on your adult life?
Yeah, there were some good teachers that taught us how to live, and they told us what's ahead of us, you know. So there's a lot of things that I learned besides the 3 R's, you know. There's a lot that sometimes the superintendent or the teacher, principal, or somebody would get us together in an assembly and preach, lecture to us about how to live and what not to do and what to do. So I learned a lot when I was in school about what's ahead of us, how to live, you know. And I don't know, I hope they still do it up in school now.
Okay. Could you tell me about your town, the town where you were raised? Can you remember anything about it that you can tell us?
This town here? Oh, when I was young, this town was just like one big family. They used to have a radio station in Ketchikan, owned and operated by one man by the name of Jimmy Britton. And this station was known as KGBU. It's Ketchikan now. And they have a special day during the week when they have news just from this town. And they have somebody here that gathers up the news and sends it over to Ketchikan. And every time this man was about to take the news from Metlakatla, he started out like this. Now I have news flashes from that little city under one roof. And that's a good name, that's a real appropriate name for this town at that time, you know. We were just like a little city under one roof. Everybody was for everybody. Everybody was helping everybody. Now, there was a time, a few years back during my lifetime, that I noticed that little roof has been leaking in several places, you know, and it needs repairs even now. So I grew up in a town where there was harmony, Christian love, and so on like that. See? When I walk down the street, if I could meet some older person, if they see me do something wrong, they'd stop and talk to me like I was their own child. See? And I don't know if that still goes on now. There are some that do that now. So that's the kind of and people were honest. That's what I told one of the preachers that they had of the church. When I was young, I didn't have to put a padlock on my woodshed, my smokehouse. Now I have to put a padlock, and that describes the whole thing. People are not as honest as they used to. You hear a lot of things, and they'll. The difference between the old days and the present is that in the old days we were more or less isolated in this town, you know. We lived together as one family, and sometimes you don't even know what's going on in the outside world. But now we're exposed to the outside world. That's one of the reasons that things have changed a lot, see. We're exposed to the outside world through TV, radio, newspaper, and so on. So if the older people would do everything they can, then those changes wouldn't, there would be much change. We can still go back to the way we used to live.
Okay. I know that you grew up here and you lived here all of your life. Can you remember anything else about this community? You know, can you describe this community long ago? You know, the outlay of it and stuff. How it was to live in the community long time ago. How it was built.
Oh, you mean how we used to live?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just what I've been telling you. It's a peaceful community, and people were getting along real nicely and all that stuff. But as far as what we have now, it's kind of hard when I think back. You know, with all the things that we have now, push button age they used to call it. You know. In the old days, the older people, our parents, my grandparents, used to have to work. You have to do everything. I remember going to school, my mother used to have to get up early in the morning, especially in the cold days in the winter, and build a fire, you know. Build a fire, and she could cook breakfast for me before she sent me off to school. And then at noon she would prepare another meal. So there's a lot of advantages now that we didn't have in the old days. That's the only difference. Now you just get up and push a button and everything is already. We're kind of spoiled now, you know. When I'm alone, when my family goes on a vacation, I just don't want to cook. It's easy to go downstairs and get a package of TV dinner. And we don't have that in the old days. See, that's the only difference. It's the only difference we have now.
Could you tell us some stories on how you made your living living here in Metlakatla?
In Metlakatla. Well, in the old days, we really don't depend on finding a job. Of course, there weren't very many jobs anyway. But there was a person, I don't know either from school or someplace that visited the senior center one time, and he wants to know about the same question you're asking. And this is what I told him, that this was just like a farming town in the old days. We raised our own food, raised vegetables, everything. And then we put up, my parents put up dried fish, half-dried fish, salt fish, jarred fish, and so on like that, you know. And they put up salt meat and dried meat, jarred meat, and all that. And then they salted woolgans, and they dried them, smoked woolgans, and so on. And fish, herring eggs, and of course, seaweed, you know. So we have plenty of food in the old days. Even if you don't have 1 red cent, you can still live. The only time you have a hard time if you're too lazy to work in the summer gathering food. So that's how we used to live. Now we don't do that. And that's one that man disagreed with me. This is what I said to that man at visited. I think we can still go back to the ways in the old day. We can still do that now, but we just don't want to do it. You know, that's what I told that man. And then he kind of didn't like that. He said to me, "You mean to say where you want to go back to the old ways?" I wish I could hit him and throw him out of there. He misunderstood me, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't mean the old ways or the heathen ways or anything. That's the way we live, the way we support our family, you know. Now things have changed now. We don't put up, well, we still put up, and I'm glad to see that we still have put up our food. That helps, you know, that helps quite a lot. So we can still do that now.
Okay, we're almost to the close of the questioning. But before we close, I wonder if you have a couple stories that you would like to tell us. Any kind of piece of advice to the younger generation or stories that you might remember of long ago?
Oh, I was one of those kids, restless kids when I was a little kid. Whenever I had a grandfather that's a good storyteller, a step-grandfather. That's Solomon Guthrie's uncle, and he used to be known as Shm'algyack, Sidney Campbell. That's his lot, that's where Solomon's house is now. He used to come and visit us when I was a kid, and he tells stories. He's just full of Indian stories, you know. And my brothers and sisters and my parents were really attentive, but I was the only one that was restless. Especially when he comes in the afternoon when the weather is good. I'd like to go outside and play. And another thing why I didn't listen too much of him, you just have to sit still when he tells a story and listen. You know? And I wasn't that kind that could do that in those days anyway. So I remember some stories, but right now I just couldn't think of any stories you might want to hear. I told a story up when Arnold and Mary were taking care of the bilingual program at the school one time. And that man that used to come around here, I forgot his name now, that takes care of that. He liked one story that I told you, and then he wanted me to repeat it and record it. But that little boy in the moon. Did you ever hear that story?
You want to tell us?
Did
Go
you
ahead
ever
and
hear
tell.
it before? Oh. Well, there was a little kid, little boy that cried one middle of the night. He wanted a drink of water. And his father was always enjoying his sleep. He was, well, I must put, might as well say it, he was too lazy to get up. So he told the little boy to wait till the morning, and then I'll get you a drink. But the little boy kept on crying. He was real thirsty, you know. Cried. But the father just ignored him, you know, and just let him go. After a while, somebody came in through the door and talked to the little boy. "Come on, I'll give you a drink of water." And the little boy was still crying, and the father heard him. His cry was, the sound of his crying was getting further and further away. And the old man got up, and it was too late.